There we go. Good evening. Welcome to Let's Drone Out.
We are live. Good evening. My name is Lee. Some of you might recognize me as Painless 360, and I'm obviously not Jack. And the reason for that is pretty much everybody, apart from Frank, has found something more interesting or more important to do tonight. So I am taking over as host. So apologies for that in advance. So as well as Painless 360, you obviously have Andrew/Frank.
Hello.
And that's all the introductions done. It's a lot shorter this year time, isn't it? We're going to do the legal notice at the top as well before we get into it, because otherwise we'll remember in the middle as we're being controversial.
Absolutely.
So go for it.
Any views expressed by any guests on this show are personal and may not reflect the views of the hosts or any participant of the show or any other people that have disappeared from the show this week.
Yes. So with all that said, we can, and I love the fact that everybody, if you're listening to this on the podcast, you can actually interact with Let's Drone Out while it's being streamed live, and there's a live chat running, and I'm just looking at it all at the side of the screen I'm looking at now that has Frank drinking his beer. It's quite funny. Everyone's just saying, "Oh, okay, it looks like the grown-ups are in charge tonight." So thank you everyone for that, but you obviously haven't been out with me and Frank for a bit. So tonight it's going to be a very different format. It is literally going to be like the kind of chats that Frank and I have when we do occasionally bump into each other in the right part of the country and have a beer, or more typically when Frank actually manages to get an hour away from work. And we end up I ring him for a quick 3-minute chat and we're on the phone for about an hour and a half. It's about standard.
That's about right.
Yeah, about that.
So, you've forgotten the few weeks of back and forth of each other trying to ring each other and neither of us being available.
Oh, okay, telephone right,
phone.
Yeah, we do play telephone tag a lot. I thought you were going to talk about the 2 weeks in a field down south last summer. That's what
there
I thought
was that as well.
For those of you that don't know, I think, and can I call you Andrew on this?
Yes,
I know it's going to confuse everyone, right? But I know it's just Andrew. It's Andrew and I were involved in that. I don't know if any of you saw it last year. It was a thing that Love Productions did for Channel 4 called the Model Squadron, and it was a group of RC modelers from both the UK and Germany recreating key battles in the Battle of Britain, and it was an experience. I think we'll call it that. And Andrew and I were part of a team of 4 ground crew that were basically sticking things back together, trying to find lipo checkers and servo checkers and basically
hunting down where the team had stored the lipos and all that sort of thing.
Yeah. We're not going to get into detail, but the Germans did squirrel away an awful lot of the lipos that the English needed. It was, in fact, the whole thing could have been twice as long. But that's what I thought you were going to talk about then. So, what have you been up to this week? Because I know you've been flying, haven't you?
Yeah, well, funnily enough, at the weekend I was at a Woodsprings show, which is where Steve from the show, from the Battle of Britain team, he was the flight director, and Shannon was commentating for quite a bit of it. And there was a big group of the mostly the Brits, but also Christian came along. Representing the Battle of Britain Model Squadron kind of thing, bringing all the same sort of stuff out with all the FPV gear and everything, and displaying that at Woodsprings show.
Is it worthwhile you talking about a little bit about some of that technology on the planes? Because some of the stuff that we did on that gig last year was some of it was pretty standard stuff if you're an FPV racer, but some of it was things that I'd never seen before after flying for 20 odd years.
Yeah, so I mean, the biggest difference from what a lot of us know through normal FPV wings or FPV quads was the pan and tilt mechanism on the actual FPV camera. So this was so basically 2 servos, one panning the camera left and right, and the other one tilting the camera up and down, and so you can look around. And this was also controlled by the through a Tyrannus, through the head tracking module in some Fat Sharks. So it was detecting you moving your head left and right and up and down, and it was translating that into moving the servos left and right and up and down to move the camera. So it was almost like you're looking around the cockpit in real time.
And the FPV team guys had actually recreated the inside of these cockpits of these Spitfires, ME-109s, Heinkels, all these different kind of things. And they cut out all the plastics, so just leaving the ribs on the actual canopy. So when you were looking around, it looked amazing. But most of the pilots who had come along had never flown. Oh, fantastic. Tony has done £5. Thank you. So Frank's going to have to burn his house down.
Yeah. I forgot this stuff dripped molten metal everywhere.
Yeah, there's nothing important on your desk, is there, Andrew?
Just me.
Right, okay. I see you've got a beer by the side. If anything catches fire, just put it out with that. And the other thing that was done as well was there was this whole system on the planes, which was this infrared kind of gun system that you could fire using an auxiliary channel on the radio. And then there was a little smoke canister that mounted underneath the plane, and when it sustained so many hits, it was all done via Wi-Fi. It's very clever. When it sustained so many hits, then the smoke canister would pop, and then that plane was considered damaged and out of the thing. And I've not seen it since. So you actually were playing with all of this week, were you?
So we were only doing really the FPV stuff.
Oh, we've got another one. Rob Britton, 449. You're
trying to
You're gonna have to light it on that one. Thank you, Rob. That's really kind. Thank you, Tony.
I would do the bigger ones that we've got, but the trouble is that smokes me out and I can't breathe for the next 20 minutes, which when I'm the only person here, besides you, I don't really want to leave you to it. So I'm going to have to just multiple up on the
well, as it turns out, my video looks like it's frozen anyway, so it's good it's stuck on you because you're the one with the pyrotechnics. so right, while you're not trying to set yourself on fire, so what were you doing with all this technology then?
So everyone had pretty much stripped out the infrared stuff, because I mean it's great when we're on set, but after that it's a bit of a struggle. But we were doing a lot with the FPV, so unfortunately a lot of the head trackers seem to have also died in the past year, so a lot of them have been moved over to sliders and rotary dials and things on Tyrannuses, rather than using the head tracker to control it. But the what they were doing for the smoke instead was James had built up some pyro control units that were on a switch instead. So that it was all planned. Okay, now we fire the smoke, rather than being an actual combat battle. I'm just making sure I'm not setting fire to anything else. There's a lot of smoke going everywhere from this one.
Mr. Fruity Cakes has just commented that you look scared, and I do have to agree. But it's nearly gone. You've got a bucket of water or something to put that in, haven't you?
I do have a little miniature. Yeah.
Yeah, good, fab. Yeah, don't stick it in your beer. That would be there we go. Awesome. Thank you very much, everyone. Oh, that's really exciting. So is this stuff that's being made more accessible to the rest of us? Because I've got a friend that we would love to do that dogfighting thing with.
Well, in terms of dogfighting, Christian has actually invited a load of us. I don't know if he managed to get his invitation to you. I did pass your email address on, so maybe you've got it, maybe you haven't. But over in Germany, not this week, but next weekend, we're going out to his field near Frankfurt, where he's got some very early prototypes of a run of PCBs that are being made up right now of essentially the same sort of thing that we were dealing with in terms of infrared guns triggering things going off as a dogfighting capability. And this is on Facebook as FPV Combat, I think it's called.
Okay.
This guy has been building up some PCBs for this, and Christian has got some early samples, and we're going to be testing those out in a field in Germany next weekend. It's going to be fun.
That would be awesome. If give the guys a nudge, because I would love to keep up to date with that, because even I've got friends who fly quads who would probably still quite like to do the whole combat shooting each other down with smoke thing.
Oh,
Mind
yeah,
you, that's probably going to be illegal as of October anyway.
But the other thing about this is that it's got an OSD in there as well. So instead of just kind of judging by whether the smoke has gone off or not, they've got you see like tracer bullets, almost tracer rounds in the OSD, and you see your ammunition go down, and you see your lives, and it's comes up with messages saying you've been hit, and all that sort of thing.
Oh, that sounds awesome. Are there any videos that we can have a look at?
There is a few videos, but I think they are all on Facebook rather than YouTube. But I'll see if I can get something put across so you can see it.
If we can find the videos, we'll put them in the show notes. How about that?
Yeah,
and then people can have a look, because I would love to do that. I love the idea of having an ammo counter. It's like the sentry guns in Aliens.
But yeah, so that's something we're looking forward to. But the other thing, I was invited along to Woodsprings to do some FPV live streaming. So Steve and Sharon invited me along from Mini Air Show, saying, you got this to work here. Can you come and do something here? And we can strap cameras to other planes and all sorts of things. And I was like, yeah, all right, I'll give it a go. We were sort of checking things through beforehand, making sure it's all going to work. And there was loads of internet, all fine. And I got there and turned up on the Saturday, and it's like, there's no internet.
Oh dear.
What it was is it was a lot more popular than I expected it to be, and I think with just the crowd of people that have just spectators being there already, I think that had pretty much saturated the local 4G network. So there wasn't a lot left for streaming, which was a bit of a challenge. But eventually got something workable.
Are we going to have dogfighting at next year's Mini Air Show?
I think we should.
We've got to, really, haven't we? Because that was probably the coolest thing I've seen in the hobby for a long time. For those who haven't seen this show that I'm talking about, I'm not sure if it's still available on My4 or whatever, the streaming thing, but there was probably 25, maybe 30 planes in the air at once. We had to have all the radios turned off. We had to have the walkie-talkies turned off. We had to have all the mobiles on airplane mode. It got really exciting. But having all these planes whirling and whipping around, there were a couple of mid-air collisions, but most of them were genuine kind of dogfighting stuff. And we had a couple of guys who were actually flying with and using the FPV properly to line up and shoot other planes down. But most of it was done line of sight. But just stood watching it from the side and watching the smoke popping and these planes leaving these big smoke trails as they kind of came into land. It was fantastic.
Absolutely, it was magnificent. In fact,
I think that's a very good word. I think that magnificence, I can't even say it. Magnificence needs to be at the Mini Air Show next year, bud.
I think so. Well, a lot of what the Battle of Britain guys coming together and doing this kind of team display, that's what they want to try and do, is go to more events and hone this down to a fine art of making this big display happen. So hopefully they can kind of build on that.
That'll be really good.
So I'd been kind of boiled along with my magic box that Jack built, that takes all the FPV video feeds and squeezes it into a network cable so I can put it out the other end into my laptop and do some streaming with it. And we were doing that so that there's all these people there who have got phones on them but have never seen goggles or anything, and there's only so many goggles amongst hundreds and hundreds of people. And it wasn't reasonable to try and give everyone a ride along and some goggles, but we thought if we can take that stream and broadcast it out and allow people to see it on their phones, then it gives everyone a bit more of an insight into the FPV side of things and why we get so excited about it.
It definitely lowers the barrier for entry. That's quite a smart way to do it. Like you say, assuming that the network can handle the bandwidth.
Yes, this was a problem, but because I've also looked at trying to run it locally over Wi-Fi and things, so people could just join a little local Wi-Fi bubble and get it directly. but then there's all sorts of technical issues with that. It's a really hard problem to solve. And I think the only solution is to have lots more internet available.
Do we need what's it? The next one, G5 or whatever it is.
Yeah, we'll get the 5G. In fact,
5G.
Getting a bit more technical, 5G has a part of it called EMMC or something, which has been built by the likes of BBC and that lot as a way to do this very thing for big events and stadiums. There's lots of video feeds and all that sort of thing. So in some amount of time, we might be able to piggyback on that sort of stuff. But at the moment, it's really hard. As Crikey72 says in the chat, what about a large outside screen or a projector? Well, the problem is it's generally quite bright, which means that your normal, projector's completely out of the question. Normal screen out of the question. You need an outdoor daylight media screen, and they are really expensive. You're looking for a nice one that people can see, the ones that you sort of expect to see at these FPV events. Those are going around £1,000 a day if you're lucky. So that's not really an option. And when everyone's walking around with a screen in their pocket, you just want to get it onto those, but it's really hard.
I like the idea. Well, it definitely sounds like you had a more successful week then playing with all this technology than I did, because my flying day was a complete unmitigated disaster. I wanted to go to the field because you know the way it works when you're doing a video. Everyone wants to see the model fly at the end of the video, even though it ends up just being a little dot in the sky. But it proves it flies, right? And you can talk a little bit over the video, can't you, about what the characteristics of it. And there are two things I desperately need flying footage of. One is the Hobby King paramotor, which is like the big parachute with kind of a trolley underneath with a big fan on the back, and there's a knack to getting that flying, so I wanted to do the video showing the knack. And the other one was the maiden of the AR wing build that I'm trying to do. So the first one I tried was the paramotor. So while the wind wasn't too big, I thought, right, we need loads of footage of me running up and down a field like an idiot, desperately trying to get this canopy up. But with the paramotor, there's only two controls, the two brakes that control the trailing edges on the very outside back part of each of the canopy. And that when you pull one of them, it drops the back part of the canopy, and that causes drag, and that causes the canopy to turn in that direction. Okay, pretty standard stuff. But the problem is that just like a plane that isn't trimmed, if you try and hand launch a plane with the ailerons all out of whack, then all it does is just immediately try to turn over on its back and nose into the ground. So you do have to trim the canopy by doing test pulls. You have to kind of pull it over your head. And apologies, my video's crapped out because I'm actually sat here demonstrating that no one can see. But you have to pull it over your head, right? And as it comes up, it will kind of tip in one direction, and then you have to just use the trims on your radio like you would with a normal plane until the canopy comes up nice and cleanly. And when you've got it trimmed like that, then you're in a reasonable place to do it. So it was on Tuesday, red hot. I foolishly decided to wear a black polo t-shirt, so I was sweating like a pig. We had me and my mate running down the field because he was doing third person view, and we got all of the shots of this canopy going all over the place until we eventually got it trimmed. And I'm thinking, right, all we need now is the footage of me, the majestic launch of it going over my head, 50% throttle, just kind of as it comes over my head, I just kind of let go and it'll sail into the sky. And we were just setting up to do that bit and the wind came up. So that was a complete disaster. So I've got loads of footage of me running around, bright red face, completely wet through, running around in the sunshine, but actually didn't get what I wanted. So I thought, oh, I know what we'll do. We'll launch the AR wing. And one of the things I'm doing at the moment, the series started last week. I don't know if you saw it, Andrew, but it's the next arduplane build that I'm doing with a 900mm wing, Maytech flight controller, crossfire this time, things like that. So although the series has just started, if you look in the playlist, you can actually find the majority of videos. There's about another 3 or 4 to make in it, but I want to do the maiden because it just proves that, hey, technology works. Because it does, but you need a video because people like to see it fly.
Yeah.
So, so I thought, right, okay, it's windy, doesn't matter. We'll throw the wing up. Now, there's a problem with the code on the flight controller in the bootloader that I put on there. And I'm going to, there'll be a video out on Tuesday. So everyone that's listening to this that knows about this video can pretend you haven't heard it before when the video comes out next week. But the way it works is the bootloader, when it first starts, it goes into bootloader mode, then it pauses there for a moment and then boots into arduplane and, you know, initializes, and then the GPS locks and away you go. But there's a fault in the bootloader version that I flashed in the very latest, newest bootloader, which means that 9 times out of 10, it won't make it out of bootloader. It'll just sit there. So I was prepared to, you know, doing the plug it in, count to 10, unplug it, plug it in, count to, you know, keep going until I caught it. Anyway, first time I plugged it in, booted beautifully, GPS locked, went in and used the bits and pieces to on for the crossfire to set the VTX power. Everything's looking fantastic. I'm thinking, right, here we go, rock and roll. My mate, who's going to hand launch it for me, has got the little GoPro on the brim of his cap. We're set, right? Launch it into the wind, because of course we've got the wind now, because that's what stops us with the paramotor. So I thought, okay, I'll give it the beans. I'll put it in manual mode and I'll catch it. So I'm like, okay, mate, I'm ready. Put the throttle up. He threw it. It wasn't the best throw in the world. I obviously didn't have the throttle hard enough, and it just kind of tipped over. It did that thing that, you know, all the really bad wing launches do. It just kind of went straight into the grass. So, and broke the winglet off. So it's like, okay, hot glue time. So, you know, 5 minutes later, it was all back together. But of course, I unplugged it while I did the hot glue. I don't want it sat there with the VTX running, you know, getting warm. And then could I get it out of bootloader mode? 45 minutes I played with this thing, because I'm thinking I just needed this. I just need literally footage of it leaving his hand, flying around, cut to a bit of the FPV footage from the goggles, you know, tickety boo, tick, next video. About auto launch, I think, would be the next one. And I couldn't get that either. So I went all this way for my flying day and ended up with. But the only good thing that came out of the day was actually one of the mate I was with. I'm teaching him to fly FPV on fixed wing. So of course, because we had nothing else to do, we dragged the little FPV wing out and kind of got him flying on that. And it was a real breakthrough, because up till now, every time I go, I do 3 or 4 batteries with him for FPV, and we're doing it on a buddy box system, and you know, it's actually working really well. But this time we actually had him flying from specific points to specific point around the field. So before, I've just got him up to, you know, 200, 300 feet and just let him fly around, you know, had my finger over the button to take control if something nasty happened. And this time I was actually, okay, so you fly to this point and fly to this point. And it was lovely at the end, because every time he does this, when we go into it, he's a bit lackluster about the whole experience, because, you know, he's been a line of sight plane flyer for, well, a very long time, you know, back in glow engine days. And every time he finishes, he's more excited. And I think this time the penny dropped about how cool FPV and fixed wing is. So yeah, it was great. So the only thing that's panicking him at the moment is landing FPV. So, but the problem is you know the way it works, right? If you're coming in an FPV with a smaller plane, what looks like a reasonable distance out from the field, you pull your goggles down and then try and find the plane line of sight, and you can't see it, or your spotter's tapping you on the shoulder going, it's there, it's over the tree, and there's 27 trees. No, not that tree. No, you need to go left, when he means right. So so that's the next thing is crashing. And in fact, actually, there's a couple of people in the chat that so I need to say hello to people like Fraser and people like James, who I've done stuff with recently and talked about the move from multi-rotors to flying fixed wing. Yeah. And there seems to be the same 5 or 6 things that catch people out all the time, particularly if you have a background in multi-rotors. And I don't know whether it's worthwhile maybe talking those the kind of 4 or 5 golden rules I go through. If anyone's listening.
Pulsing a throttle doesn't get you over the tree?
Exactly. Exactly. Throttle does not.
I've seen that many times.
Yeah, throttle does not equal height in a fixed wing. It just means you hit the thing harder. There's a couple of things. Yeah, I mean the first one. Let's talk about that then. I mean, for the most common 2 mistakes I see are multi-rotor pilots when they're going down the field. in a multi-rotor and they realize that they may be a little lower than they thought and the obstacle in front of them, they're going to hit it, you can just blip the throttle and you rise into the air above it and you clear it. And that is a muscle memory that's really dangerous in a fixed wing, because it just, like I said, speeds you up. The other thing that multi-rotor pilots I find really struggle with fixed wing is, as multi-rotor pilots, we all get used to using the rudder to change direction. Yeah. And hard use of the rudder in a fixed wing, particularly if it is a wing, it's not as bad in that, but in a normal plane, something like a Bixler or an AXM float or something like that, if you slam the rudder over, you get a really violent reaction. So the way I do it, and in fact, one of the guys in the chat I was talking to about a couple of weeks ago, with a Mode 2 radio, I normally say, once the plane's flying, put the throttle at 50% and then take your thumb off that stick and just use the aileron to turn and the elevator to change the height. And that will usually get you, your first half a dozen flights without too many problems. I mean, the other problems are multi-rotor pilots want to fly really low in the early days. Yeah. So the 3 mistakes high rule, although it's great in principle, you kind of, you do a couple of and that's the thing as well. And if it's flying line of sight, the whole nose in thing, when the plane is flying or wing is flying towards you and the aileron's reversed, if you have a momentary brain fart as it's doing that, then if you're not high enough, you make the correction you think you need, it actually exacerbates the problem. Before you know it, the plane's upside down heading into the ground, which means that you immediately blip the throttle, because that's going to give you more height, and that just rams it into the floor even faster. But so there's only about 4 or 5 things that I tend to do with pilots like that. I think I might make a video on it, actually, just to kind of help people. I mean, I've done a couple of videos already, but it's amazing how many pilots I have the conversation with who then go and then crash and come back and can tell me exactly which one of those pieces of advice they completely ignored.
Well, yeah, I mean, for me, I'm pretty sure I've worked out all the brain farts of getting it left, right, and right is left now, after 14 years. But it's the other part is the orientation and the brain fart of is that it going. Is that with the left wing up and it's going from right to left, or is it going the other way? It could be either way when it's just a silhouette and you don't know which way it's going. It's like, am I going away from myself or am I going towards myself? And you just have to kind of try something and see doing what you expect.
Exactly. You have to use the wing waggle, as it's known in our circle, and see whether or not the wing moves in the same direction as the stick, which probably means it's flying away from you. If it moves in the other direction, then it probably means it's coming towards you, and you probably need to get some height. But it's a really interesting part of the hobby, because some of the guys that I talk to are coming into the hobby brand new and have never flown before. So you're talking to them of really basic stuff about the radio and things like that and how you set that up. Because even things like, for example, on the radio with the fixed wing, you add things like exponential and travel, right? And as quad pilots, we don't do that because Betaflight does all that for us, right? And the reaction time of a fixed wing the wing seems to be flying through molasses, because with a multi-rotor, when we've got it tuned properly, this thing will flip 5 or 6 times a second. Right, and it'll do a hard stop, and Betaflight will work really hard to do that really hard crisp stop when we're doing aerobatics and acro. With a plane, we're just relying on good old-fashioned physics and air moving over bits of balsa wood or bits of foam to kind of do it. And I know for lots of pilots, particularly quad ones, it feels really slow to react. So you almost have to anticipate things a little bit more in a slightly different way with a plane. I think that catches a few new pilots out too. I
have a tendency to just have a lot of throttle on a plane, just because I know it's not going to fall out the sky then. And
you know that planes can actually fly without the engine on, right?
I know, but it's particularly when it's something that looks quite slow as it's flying along. And then I'm just worried, like, am I going to stall? When's it going to stall? What's it going to do when it stalls? And I just tend to have a throttle up on high a lot of the time. I was very grateful on Saturday. Yick gave me a go on his. He's got a Texan T6. He even swapped over a radio to be in mode 2 and was giving me a go on that. And so I got to fly there, and he was like, no, bring the throttle back, bring it back. And I was like, it's going to fall out sky. It's going to stop flying at some point. Wings stop working when they go too slow. But he sort of was talking me through it as it was kind of doing whatever. And that ended up being quite fun. And I got used to the model, and I got relaxed into it. And then I got a very not painful reminder. I got a very strong reminder that I wasn't just on my own in a field as I might usually be. Or, there's not just a few of us here. There's a lot of people here. And because all of a sudden, I think it was pretty much the entirety of the MWM Warbirds team just turned up and threw things into the air. Everything from Hawks, EDFs, EF extras that have obviously had different motors and batteries put in, and everything that the sky just explodes with loud things coming in front of me, very loud, and it was just okay. And I need to land at some point now, and I don't know when I'm going to be able to do that, because it's just going to end up with a cloud of foam if I do that now. It's just an interesting experience to be flying with that many people line of sight, which you can't really do FPV, because you really get 6, maybe 8. I mean, if you're at a very well organized race, you can get 16, but you're going to do that for fun.
Well, while we're on that subject, actually, this is something that I was talking about to somebody in the business the other day, in that the reason that we can, in the UK, there's only 6, 7 channels that we can use. I don't remember, there was a video that I did a while ago with Greg from Menace, and he worked out all the harmonics of all the different channels that was legally available to us in the UK and outside the UK, and gave recommendations about what the best channels were for having 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and up to 7 pilots. And interestingly, it wasn't Raceband, which I thought was quite interesting. But the actual frequencies that we have available to us as part of the hobby is pretty broad. And if we are, rather than working with these inherited bands that we have, the Fat Shark band we still use quite a lot. There's the Raceband, and then there's the others. Maybe it used to be called things like Boss Cam. Do you remember that?
Yeah, they're generally just referred to as the letters now, aren't
they? A,
B,
E, F, sometimes maybe D and R. But if you actually look at those frequencies, there is a much better way for us to space the channels out so that the harmonics from the individual VTX transmissions don't interfere with each other, and we could get a little bit more out of the very limited FPV 5.8 gig band that we have. So I'm hoping, you heard it here first, that we will have some kind of recommendation, because if somebody like Fat Shark or Immersion, because a lot of the transmitters that I'm getting in at the moment have the ability to set discrete frequencies. So rather than you have to go with the preset ones, you can set it up to 5.762 or whatever gigahertz that you want. And also on some of the new receivers that I'm getting in now, some of the newer goggles, it also has the ability to kind of give you that feature as well. Now, it used to be that doing that on things like the immersion kit needed the super duper wand, the super duper setup stuff. But I'm really interested in being able to do that, because having the most fun I have FPV is chasing my mate's plane around the sky.
Yeah.
Right. It would be awesome if there was 3 or 4 of us, mate, you, me, Jack, a couple of mates, whatever, chasing each other around the sky. And who knows, maybe having a spotter or 2 and using that gun system that you're talking about. Yep. That just sounds like the most fun radio control flying day ever. So I'm hoping we can get some ideas for this FPV stuff. So keep your fingers crossed we can work something out. But that would be lovely.
On the weekends, I'd forgotten there's all this stuff that you need to learn with FPV that a lot of people don't know, and so there was all this all these guys who haven't used FPV much, and when they have done it, it's either been with basically you controlling everything, or they've been on their own, or with a spotter, but not flying loads of FPV at the same time. So to have all these people turning up and being like, okay, so we need, we need to be on these channels. And I'm like, why? We're all in Raceband. It's fine. Like,
yeah, it doesn't quite work like that.
It's not going to work that way. And then you're like, it's all right. It'll be easy. We'll just change the channels. It'll be fine. And then you get to it, and of course, it's buried in this fixed wing model.
There's one button that you have to press for 3 seconds to get into. Yeah,
it's not even that. It is, as Drone Racer says in the chat, it's dip switches. And you look at these transmitters and go, I don't think that's entirely in compliance with 25 milliwatts, judging by the sticker, but I'm sure that's a mistake on the part of...
Yeah, the CE sticker must have fallen off because it got warm. That'll be what it is.
Exactly. That must be a model number and not a
milliwatt power. Yeah.
And then, okay, so that's running on that much, so that's going to swamp everything. So there's all these sorts of things. It's like, I hadn't thought about these problems.
You see, surely it can't be that difficult, right? We've got, here in the EU, we've got this wonderful LBT system on the FR Sky transmitters, right? So they listen before they start transmitting, which actually I think is a really good idea for FPV. So if you're flying and somebody walks up and has accidentally left their VTX on the same channel that you've got, and they plug the battery in and completely stomp all over you, it would actually be quite nice if a VTX, when it powered up, actually had some receiving equipment that it could kind of just listen briefly to that channel and just go, no one else is using this, right? And if it didn't, then it could power up. I'm just conscious we've been going for 36 minutes and we haven't mentioned the competition.
Absolutely. So Jack will be very unhappy if I don't mention the competition. So we are doing a competition for our 4-year anniversary coming up this August. So from episode 200 we announced this, and it's been carrying on. If anyone so Drone is Life has donated a bunch of goodies, and Jack's looking after them, and usually at this point in the show he'd be waving them about, so you just have to kind of imagine that I've got some goodies from Drone is Life at the moment, and we are going to be awarding them to whoever sends us well, if you send in a memory of LDO through timestamps or snippets or edits or any other collection of your favorite moments from LDO over the past 4 years, we're going to watch them the week before our 208th episode, and we're going to pick one, and we're going to announce the winner on our 208th episode, our 4-year episode, and they will get some goodies. So we haven't had a huge number of entries, so if you do send something in, as I say, either a timestamp of a podcast or a YouTube video, or an edit that you put together, anything like that, you've got a fairly good chance of winning some goodies at the moment. So you can send them in to letsdroneout@gmail.com, or you can send them to our Facebook page at facebook.com/letsdroneout, or I'm sure you'll find a way somehow. But those two should be good enough, I think.
Fantastic. Thanks, Andrew. And welcome, Tony.
Oh, sure. I made it with 20 minutes left. Oh, my God. That was a long drive. I'm so tired. But Jokervision's probably more tired. I think he's just going home. He lives down the road, and I'm going to send him the link to come on and see if he can be on for 10 minutes. In the chat, no, I'm not getting topless tonight, I'm afraid. I'm too tired for that.
Yeah, that's only when Jack's on the podcast, I think, isn't it, Tony? It's a special thing.
Pretty much. I just try to keep him amused,
So, Tony, you've been doing something pretty impressive. Are you allowed to talk about any of that on the
podcast? Yeah. Went drift car chasing today at Rockingham. Quite far away. It got shut down last year, didn't it, Rockingham circuit?
Is this what all the kind of like the good quadcopter pilots are doing? Because every time I look at it these days, they got somebody chasing a drift car. So is this? How did you get this gig?
Danny Jokervision, who may come in on the chat in a minute if I send him a link. He's got
do.
He knows some people who used to do it, because I think it was a photographer for some car magazines back in the day, and I think that's how he got the gig. And then we went up this morning, and we got there, and they're like, "They're not sure you can fly, you know," and we were like, "Oh my god, we just drove 3 hours. Please don't say that." But showed them our certificates of insurance and things like that, and they're like, "Oh, okay." So we were all right after that. And I told them that I'm a pro, so because once you get paid for something, you're a pro, right?
Yeah, that's
true.
Yeah, that's true. There's other interpretations, but we'll move on from that. So yeah, you had a good day, mate. Yeah.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I'm so tired, but really good. We drove through so much rain on the way up. We were like, no, please. Got there, and it was nice and dry up there. Actually, it was good.
Fab. So when will we see that footage?
Maybe next week at some point. I've got tomorrow work, Friday night, early night, because we're going to Quadtopia the weekend if it doesn't rain hard, which is basically a load of guys in a field, massive fire. You're coming, aren't you, Frank?
I am coming.
Big fire, drones, planes, guns, and
what can go wrong?
Yeah, no, today was really, really good fun though. Yeah, but they had a wet track today, so they run dry tracks and wet tracks depending on if there's another event. It's not weather; it's depending on it is depending on weather, but noise. So they wet the track so it's not permanently for 8 hours. Yes, they do that. So when I was getting low and chasing cars, like real low, I was getting water on the lens and things like that. But I think we've got enough footage to have some fun. But yeah, it'll be next week, I should think.
Well, so, if you have any of those gigs north of Watford and you need a bagman, mate, give me a call.
It was Norfolk. Where was it? Well, we're Rockingham. Where was that? It was up past where NJ lives. I went through NJ's hometown.
Watered his plants.
Bedfordshire, I think.
Bedfordshire, lovely.
A bit further on than that. I've just sent Joker the link, so hopefully he might come on. But cool. Yeah, it was good fun. But we're going up there to do a dry day, so we chase them when it's dry. So we'll have more tyre smoke and all that schmalarkey.
Yeah, unless less blowout on the lenses. There's a couple of questions I've just noticed people asking, so I'm keen that we cover these. One of them was from Dave. Dave, you were asking, IRC is not the best or legal in the UK. IRC, one of the channels on what we call Fat Shark or IRC or Band D or Band F, whichever you want to choose. One of them is not legal in the UK. It's outside the limit, but actually it doesn't provide bad separation. So it's not illegal in the UK. There are a couple of bands that aren't. I do have a video in it. If I remember, we'll put the link in the show notes that talk about what the legal things are. It's part of the FPV Antenna Lab series. And Jack, who's obviously listening, so hello, Jack, I hope you're feeling better, buddy, was asking, have I done the Fat Shark DVR update? The answer is yes, I did a video on it, so I had to. It has helped. The DVR update is only for when you have an issue where maybe you're trying to synchronize FPV footage recorded in the goggles with maybe a GoPro or something on the actual model itself. You'll sometimes find that the video is a slightly shorter video from the DVR than from the GoPro, and that's because the original firmware in the goggles, if there was something wrong with the frame of the video, it would just kind of bin the entire frame and just kind of not bother. So that meant the frame was slightly concatenated and it was kind of crushed down. So that meant trying to get it exactly synced was a real pain in the butt. What the firmware update does, and check the readmes because it's not suitable for all Fat Shark goggles, so double check. You put it on the SD card, you update it, and all it really does is improves the algorithm for things like rapid fire, where you could also with rapid fire get some weird effects in the DVR as well, because the way it works, it kind of fixes all that stuff. There is a downside though, and the downside is that the auto recording, which I actually really like on the goggles, because I always forget to hit the button. Hey, all right, Danny.
Hello.
There he is.
There he is. He's made it. I always forget to hit the button. That's disabled by default because it doesn't automatically switch between NTSC and PAL. It has to kind of see the video feed before you hit the button. So the answer is, that was a very long way of saying yes. But if you're thinking of doing it, triple read the readmes so that nothing nasty happens. Make sure you've got a full battery on your goggles. You don't want it crapping out before it's finished the update. It doesn't take too long.
Sweet. How are you feeling after driving 6 hours, Danny?
Shattered. Absolutely shattered.
It was a long way to go, but worth it, wasn't it?
It was great fun. And they've invited us back. Everyone was asking if they had to pay for the footage.
We should have said yes.
You should. I'll burn you a DVD. It'll only be 15 quid.
Yeah.
Well, there's a guy taking pictures for people, but we've we
didn't get anything.
I don't think he did. No.
But gonna have to get your PFCOs until July 2020.
Yeah, it's not worth getting them now, is it?
I don't think so, really. To be honest, unless you're desperately going to do something in the next year that's going to make you loads of money, then probably not.
I have got one gig coming up, but it's got to be free.
Danny, you've got the lousiest keyboard on the planet.
I know. Do not type anymore.
Okay, I won't type back to him.
Just talk it.
It's mechanical, that's right.
Just say hello in the chat or whatever. People were saying hello to you.
Dave was asking about the X-Class, and it was just a 5-inch that we was allowed to fly, because we technically wasn't allowed to fly.
No. But they let us.
Sometimes 5 inches is enough.
That's what she said.
There we go. There's the one per list. Because Jack's here in spirit, even if he isn't here.
That was Jack took over my body. Could you tell that?
No, it can't have been Jack because your clothes are still on. I tell you, there is one thing I do want to talk about while we're all together on this, and it's a subject that's a bit close to my heart, and that is when I use a bit of technology, so there's something like Betaflight or iNav or arduPilot or some of the cool little telemetry gizmos and things you can put on your radio, you can get a lot of this stuff from GitHub now, and a lot of these pages that we go to have this little donate and support the project, and 99.9% of us completely ignore that, download it, try it, it works, and then hey, we're at the field. It was just a very quick kind of just nudge to everybody in the hobby. If you are using particularly software that somebody's writing and not getting paid for, they're doing it for the love of the hobby, and you download it and you use it and you get enjoyment out of it, kick those developers back a couple of bucks. It makes a massive I know, speak to the iNav team, it makes all the difference in the world to them, and it also just lets them know that people are actually appreciating what they do. And for those projects that don't get supported, they wither and die on the vine. So things like the Open Pilot project back in the day and stuff like that. So it was just a gentle reminder, if you're using technology and you've downloaded it for free and it works and they have a way for you to give them a couple of bucks, go and find out what that is and do Patreon or do PayPal or whatever it is, just to support and keep the stuff going in the hobby. That's
a really good idea. I've never even thought about doing anything like that.
That's the problem, mate. When most of and to be fair, I have to give myself a kick in the arse a couple of months everywhere, because I'll find new tech and I'll download it. Somebody will mention something to me, I'll get it, I'll use it, and think, oh, that's amazing. That's really good. And then it'll be a couple of weeks later, I'll think, oh my god, I'm still using it, I'm still loving it. Like Lua scripts and things for the Taranis radio and stuff like that, it's great. And for the sake of a couple of bucks, it might, it's not even a cup of coffee for me, but at least for the guy who receives it, it shows him that somebody's kind of appreciated the time that he or she's
taken. It's a good point. I may do what you just said, to be honest. Dave Story in the chat says, you guys going to get a rebate from the editor this week? It's such a clean chat.
I think we might just need to have the last 15 minutes just completely filthy, really. Then at least he was going.
I can't be filthy without the Yeti here. It's just weird. He just changes you, doesn't he? You hang around with him and he rubs off on you a little. Yeah. Oh, I nearly swore then. So
Oh,
look, even talking about
there's
him.
one. There's one. Rubs off on you or rubs up against you.
Well,
Both.
isn't it? Depends where you are and how dark it is, and see if you can get away with it.
So what's everyone's latest projects? What they're working on? How's the X-Class flying, mate? Are you doing anything with that?
My one, it's getting there. It's slowly getting there. Looking at starting maybe nighttime displays with them.
Ooh.
So
Pyrotechnics or just lights?
lights and pyrotechnics, maybe.
Yeah,
Maybe some fireworks. I have got the Super Starlight Cat Fox here to go on.
Tell us a story about you trying to fly with that on.
Can you just take one
was
step back, Danny? Just what is that? Because you're talking a language that I'm not involved in yet. Is that what, a camera, FPV? What system?
yeah, it's
FPV
a
camera.
Foxy FPV camera.
Right.
But
Okay.
you can see it like 0.0001 lux. So it's like near on darkness.
It's very
Wow.
good in the dark. Very good. But
I stupidly set it to 16:9. Couldn't see the bottom of the screen, and I couldn't land it. That's
you
what
couldn't
it
fly it, could you? You were like, I can't. Something's happened overnight. You've changed the pins. What's happened? And I was like, I think it's because you stretch your screen. It's a screen, and you know you're supposed to have it full for free. And he was like, he swapped the camera and could fly it again. It was like, oh right, yeah, it must be that. So hopefully you'll sort that out next time we go fly, because I'm actually interested in seeing how dark you can fly with that. And Menace RC hopefully will be making us some big lights for the arms. I've gave him the measurements, but you know what I'm like, probably be too big or too small. But yeah, hopefully Menace is going to make us some nice lights for the X-Class.
Yeah, those cob lights are very bright that those guys do. I know I turned them on indoors, and yeah, I couldn't see anything for about a week.
I put them on my 5-inch, and
They're really good. They're really good.
They're really good. I did a review of the ZOHD Orbit. It has the LEDs in the wings. It's a flying wing thing, and I do like flying at dusk with lights on. It does look so cool.
Yeah, I really wanted one on Saturday, something like that, because I had my Radian as well that I hadn't flown at that point, but it was just getting too dark, and I was like, there's some lights on this, so I can fly.
Yeah, sorry we didn't come, Frank.
Oh well, I think from the reaction I had to FPV and wearing a t-shirt with a quad on, I think it may have been for the best.
I did keep asking MWM, is there any quad related stuff? And nobody got back to me. So I was like, no. We can do something else. No.
Well, maybe we can turn it around like we did at not Western, Wings and Wheels. Because they loved it down there.
There's quite a lot of. I'm just conscious. We've only got probably about 6 or 7 minutes left, and there's lots of questions coming at the moment directed towards Andrew, talking about the legislation that's coming in. In a way, it's kind of good that we've only got 6 or 7 minutes, because the last time Andy and I had a chat about this, after 45 minutes, Andrew was just warming up. So. Andrew, are you happy to give us the very top level bullet points of where we are? Just for those interested, Andrew and I did a much longer interview on this. It's available on the Painless 360 YouTube channel. Shameless plug. Apologies for that in advance. We're also going to be doing another one, probably September time, I think we said, mate, didn't we? An update which will have more detail. But are you happy to do like the high level highlights in 4 minutes?
I can do my best.
And
let's go.
Action.
So don't panic. Registration is coming in November. It's registering pilots. It's not registering quads, but it's for for 250 grams plus come November. But come July 2020, it is applying to everything with a camera. And then there's lots of other rules as well of when you need particular types, because there's going to be from July 2020, there's going to be 2 types of registering. So there's going to be a normal registration, but there's also going to be certificate of competency. which you're going to have to get from somewhere, but then it works out where yet. And there's all sorts of other rules about.
I'm getting mine from Andy RC.
So the summary, if I can kind of just jump in for a second, the bottom line is at the moment there's still loads of things to be decided, lots of things being proposed. My humble opinion is they're probably proposing an overly oppressive set of rules, so that when we pair them back to a much lesser set of rules, we'll feel like we've had a win, which is probably where they want us to be anyway. That's just how these things work. Not that I'm cynical at all about this entire process. Not at all. But so don't panic just about it yet. There are different classes that have been proposed based on weight, speed, functionality of the vehicle, which the idea is it will encompass everything. But interestingly, there are potential loopholes around if the craft is home built versus purchased. What I imagine the hobby will do is we'll all figure out what the loopholes are, and then everyone will build for the loopholes.
Because at the moment, the two classes that we're going to exist in at the moment is either so small and so slow that we're probably not going to want to fly it outside, basically tiny whoops, or it's going to have to be so far away from everything that you're never going to find any way to fly it. Those are currently the two situations come July 2020, unless between now and then we find a lot more loopholes or find a lot more spaces to fly that are ridiculously far away from anything else. But we'll see.
Yeah. So you say don't panic, but I have already started to panic.
I think it's difficult to, Tony, with the lack of information that we have and lack of certainty. I think that is as disconcerting as anything else. I know for me, it's looking at all the quads and all the planes and wings and all the stuff that I've got. You kind of thinking, what of this am I going to be able to fly without taking a 27-week exam? But I think for us, I think we just have to wait. Shake out? The good news is, I guess, from those people representing the hobby at a government level, is that talking to Andrew last time, and Andrew, please chime in if this has changed, but all these individual outfits that were talking to the government separately and trying to defend their own part, corner of the hobby, all seem to be working together now finally, which I'm taking as a good sign, because it did feel to me a little bit like the fixed wing flyers were trying to throw the drone guys under the bus. And there was a lot of that, it's not us, it's these guys kind of activity going on. And now, because it's going to bite them on the butt as well, those people representing that side of the hobby are suddenly wanting to throw their weight behind the rational arguments. So I'm hoping that more considered approach is going to bear fruit. But this is the government we're talking about, so who knows?
I know, who knows? I like Diddy 4's reply. I'm going to be painting Jolly Roger on my flying toys. Brilliant. I might do that as well.
Maybe we should all just lump together and just buy an island off Scotland somewhere and just all go there to fly.
Well, I was thinking that there'd be FPV holidays now, wouldn't there? Someone doing FPV holidays to places like Tenerife. You can fly up in the volcanoes without
FPV cruises. We can park it in the middle of nowhere. We're nowhere near anything then.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what's the legislation on beaches?
Well, Andrew, do you want to take it? The people around, right?
So you've got the issue of there being people, but even if you go at 6 o'clock in the morning when there's probably not that many people on the beach, you've got the issue of to take off, you need to have landowner's permission.
On the beach.
I thought Don Robinson said beaches are
exempt from.
Yeah, they can't.
Well, it depends who owns it. Some beaches are fine. Some beaches are owned by people.
Can I stand on the beach and take off from my hand?
That's the same thing.
Is it? Is it though?
Maybe we just.
My launch pad is my hand. I'm just borrowing there.
To be fair, Canberra Sands was more worried about Tony bringing his dog on the beach than us flying a drone.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, dogs shit everywhere.
Mine doesn't.
So does some.
Note to everyone: Frank swore. It was Frank Brought the
Okay.
tone of the show down.
You're right at the very end. We nearly made it. We nearly made it.
1 minute to go.
1
and
minute
he
to
said,
go.
"Beep."
There we go. And it's all
Might as well just join in for fuck's sake, Frank.
Well, we've got to make sure that the editor actually listens to the end, you see.
Oh, that's what it is.
fantastic. So we're just coming to the end in this. I think, you know, to summarize, because I think what happened with the video that Andy and I did a little while ago, a lot of people watched the video, were thoroughly confused at the end of it, which actually meant you'd followed it perfectly, because it is completely confusing and nobody knows what's going on. But it did mean that people were getting a bit despondent, and I wouldn't take that away from it. I think that this is very much a negotiation that's currently happening. All the people who represent the hobby are there. We just need to make sure as a hobby that we represent and behave ourselves, and don't put really stupid things on YouTube that all the people who are against the hobby can point to as examples of why it needs to be banned. So let's have, let's try and not do that for the next 8 months.
Well, like I said, today was really hard for us, because we spent nearly 4 hours driving. Get there and they go, "Oh, no drones allowed." Well, why? Oh, because there's cars here and people were spotted using drones to see what cars were here, because there's Bentleys and stuff. So, well,
it's because Rockingham now has been taken, it's been sold, and someone's bought it, and now it's basically a huge car park. And that's it. Apparently, there's people who've been flying DJI, maybe stuff what hovers and points and stuff, and finding where good cars are and then going to borrow them.
Fab. So I think we need to finish on a slightly nicer note after all that. So Andrew, do you just want to recap on the competition, and then we'll close it out, because that's gone very quickly. We're on time.
Absolutely. So please do send in your favorite moments of LDO from over the past 4 years to us at letsdroneout@gmail.com, and you will be in with a chance of winning some goodies from Drone is Life. Also, massive thanks to all our patrons. Without you, we wouldn't be able to continue doing this, because come August, the system we currently use, Google Hangouts, is disappearing. Hangouts on Air will no longer be a thing, and we're having to build our own system to be able to continue to do this. So thank you very much for all your support, without which we wouldn't carry on.
Good point. And it kind of goes back to what we were saying before. If there are things in the hobby that you get for free that you enjoy, support them, and then they'll stay around. So you have been listening to Let's Drone Out, episode 203. So with me tonight, we've had Danny.
Hey.
We've had Tony.
Bonjour.
We've had Andrew.
Bye.
And I've been Lee Schofield, also known as Painless 360. Have a wonderful week and happy flying.